My husband and I traveled to Colorado on a road trip, and we took our grandchildren to the museum there, and they have this whole part of the museum with plants of the Great Plains and animals of the Great Plains and tribes of the Great Plains. So they classify us with the animals. That's their mentality, you know, and when you're dealing with people and governments who have that mentality,
Ho otakuye, anahuputan kapo, wichoye ai printacha, nayak umpik Ahani makale aka, wichala kota heha, dohanis washichum sawichuyam shni. Makota ki tiwahe, otakuye yan kapcha, unshik chila, iushkian, hechel umpi. Hoyan khaton kawashichya ahina, otakuye he unchapshni kiapi. Mama kashka hecha yaumpa naha iho unktepi, unktewa chimpi, Okhala Kotaki, Unkishna la Wichunki Zapina, Letana Prechayampi, Ocha Chele Ampetoki, La Kolia Piki Lena Ungluha Pelo.
Our forefathers were great chiefs and warriors that signed a treaty between the United States government and our people. And treaties are an international document between two parties, and we were a nation at the time when we signed treaties with the United States government. And today is like, this year is 2009. We've come this far, but in the past, from the beginning, the United States failed to honor its agreement, and treaties were violated, and our famous chief, Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, defeated Custer in 1876 and took the flag of the United States, captured the flag, and so from then on, the remnants of the 7th Cavalry took revenge in December 29th, 1890 at Wounded Knee, and massacred and slaughtered our people because of Custer. And we were, a few years earlier, we were herded onto these, our people were herded onto these reservations and held as captives of the war between the Lakota and the United States. And we call it a prison without walls. It's a reservation. And so that's how the United States took our lands by lies and deceit and murders and all that. So these church people, the churches are involved with the United States government, conspired to take our land, and they did a good job.
It's like Red Cloud said, famous saying of Red Cloud, he said, the white man made us many promises, more than I can remember, but he only kept but one. He promised to take our land, and he took it.
Back in 1492, a pope issued a papal bull, and in his papal bull, he declared us as heathen savages. And as heathen savages, we didn't have no right to land. We didn't have human rights. We were animals. So with that, the United States, through their court system, took the Pope's papal bulls and they lorded over us as second-class citizens in this country. And in that declaration, he said that Indians were humans, that we were human in this country, that we're not supposed to be robbed, we're not supposed to be mistreated. So the Pope declared us as heathen savages. Then he passed another papal bull to treat us with respect. But the country did not pick up on that. They only used that first papal bull to take our land, to steal our ways, to assimilate us, to Christianize us. I guess they want us to see God.
I guess when we're talking about Native America, and specifically Lakota people and how the Lakota perceive what took place in the last 200 years, it's been basically a cultural genocide as well as culture genocide, but also the whole understanding of how to kill Native people is probably at the height of our Lakota mind, because we've seen so many of our people die, And one of the things I tell people now is that it's not done through wars, the Indian wars, or even through the smallpox and things like that, but it's done through economy and the economic pressures that are put on the Lakota people. You can't even build homes here because you can't get a bank loan, and that's a real issue. But over the last 200 years, our people have seen the American people as advancing and searching for materialism, whether that be gold or oil or natural resources. Even the farming industry is based on that. It's all based on greed. And when our people first met the European Americans, they didn't refer to them in their skin color, but they referred to them in as far as the knives they carried, milakumska. And then eventually, as they got to know them, they called them washichu, because that means takers of the fat. And it basically means that they're greedy.
Washichula means steals the best pieces of the meat. That's how we met him. He was stealing our meat. He was a fur trapper. And he was going hungry because he was a bad fur trapper. And he was starving.
about 8 years ago, I called a family meeting. When I call a family meeting, there's a whole bunch of people that come. So we had a meeting for 2 solid days, and we discussed many ways that we could do many things, and we talked about everything. But every form of business in the Western model is designed to ruin the earth. So what kind of business can we form that is more natural, more neutral to the earth and the air and the water, everything that we need to exist? And here one of my grandsons says, we should grow hemp. It's so many uses for it. You can break the hemp down into 300,000 different ways. You can replace everything that's made from plastic, everything that we use today from hemp. And fuel, you could use it for fuel. The fiber, you could eat it. So that's all we need. We could all live on hemp. We don't need nothing else. We planted on April Fool's Day, on April 1st. So by end of July, our hemp was mature. They were ready to be harvested. They were ripe. And we had it tested, and here it was 0 THC hemp. And this is what we wanted. We didn't want to grow marijuana. We wanted to grow hemp. And so we were just right on the right track. It seems like destiny was just controlling this whole situation. I invited the U.S. Attorney, I invited the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, every police department in the area here. I invited our tribal police, our superintendent of the BIA agency, our tribal president. I said, we're doing this harvest. You need to come and witness the first hemp harvest. And none of them came except the FBI's Division of Eradicating a marijuana eradication department came, and they held us at gunpoint. They held me and my little brother at gunpoint while they stole our crop. It was outright theft at gunpoint. You just don't do an economic taking of a family. That's against the law, except for the FBI. And I just hate what they did to our family. The trauma that went throughout the whole family, down to our youngest babies. And they came with guns into our field. Hemp is a real gentle plant. It's a beautiful plant, and guns just did not mix with what they were doing. And I think they've seen that movie Thunderheart because they were worried because there was 24 police cars and there was 2 airplanes and 1 helicopter. And one of those airplanes, it had 12 windows and you could see helmets sitting in each one. And the other aircraft was a smaller aircraft, and that one kept flying around a hemp field. He'd go around and look. I guess what they were looking for was a bunch of Indians peeking out over the hill, you know, and I think they were engaged in some form of fantasy. But there was nobody here, it was just me and my little brother. And the helicopter, he would come down and hoover while they were using their weed eaters, weed whackers they call them. But the hemp seeds were ripe, so you barely touch one and hundreds of seeds would just fall. So they basically successfully reseeded my hemp field. And the helicopter, he'd come down, and the hemp plants were so tall they would just sway, and they would push the agents around and knock them around. And so I said, hey, their plants are even fighting to live. And it was sad, but it should never happen to us. We're a sovereign nation. We have a treaty. We're the original people of this continent, but we get treated as second-class citizens. That has to stop. This silence, this complacency, it has to stop. Lakota, we want peace. We want to live in harmony, but we can never have that as long as we never have justice. Everybody has to be brought to justice. In America, you have to face up to your genocide and your ethnocide and your complacency. And this is all we want. We want to discuss this. We want to dialogue with you. Don't be racist towards us just because we're the original inhabitants here.
So now, in the top 20 poorest counties in the United States, 4 of them are in the top 10 And the number one poorest county in the nation is on a reservation, and it's called Zebok. It's up on the Cheyenne River. And then the second poorest is the Shannon County, and then there's Todd County, which is the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and then there's the Dakota people in Crow Creek. And so you have 4 counties in South Dakota that are the poorest places in America. And so how do we begin to change that? And part of it is by seeking to allow the children to dream dreams and to see visions and to build a hope that's going to be a better place.
The policies of the United States government are first bred and born on an Indian reservation. All the planning is first done here on the American Indian reservations of America and put into operation here. This is why you never hear about us. The United States keeps us out of sight, out of mind. So if you're out of sight, out of mind, they can do anything they want to us. Palestine. Look at Palestine and what the Israelis are doing. That's the policy, that's the American Indian policy of settlement, of how to take land away from the indigenous people. But Israel isn't. No, you know that it's practicing Nazism. And Nazism was born, Hitler wrote about it. Adolf Hitler wrote that the American government has the right idea on how to deal with the unwanted races, us. You put them in concentration camps. That's what he called reservations. Iraq is the new Indian reservation. They're never going to leave. They're always going to torture.
When we look at, genocide throughout the world, and America has been probably at the top of the list as far as killing people. It's a real struggle because America is a great place to live, but yet it was by the death of many Native American people, and so when we see the European American people, we see death coming, and that's a real tragedy.
You're next. The world's next. Fortunately, they're too greedy, and that's their mistake. As all empires collapse from within. They're never defeated from outside. They always collapse because they're greedy.
In 1934, when the Indian Reorganization Act was introduced, a lot of our ancestors, such as my grandfather and their grandfather, never did sign to establish the IRA government. And so, I'm a descendant of chiefs that, didn't want this new deal they call the tribal council system. And 1989, there was a special committee on Indian Select Committee on investigation on his reservations, and their findings were that BIA and IRA tribal system form of governance was a complete failure. So some of us know that, and that's why we organized a Tioshpai. Tioshpais are a form of the traditional form of governance, where the chiefs were selected. Those that are capable of leading the people were selected to lead the people. And the IRA government is anybody can become a leader. Just sign a petition and you're a leader. So that system is, we don't work with the IRA government, and we have to be free and to do as we please. We were afforded a right to self-determination by the United Nations Charter, as well as the United States Constitution, that we can decide what's best for our people in our community or reservation, instead of the government or someone else breathing down our throat and then telling us you're going to do this and do that. So that's what those laws don't pertain to. The federal laws and the state laws don't pertain to us.
But patriarchy, that's the evil of the human race, is patriarchy. Matriarchy is where we all come from. Every one of us, every human being on earth was at one time, way back, product of matriarchy. You see, patriarchy is a little over 6,000 years old. And look what it's done. Overcrowded, hunger, starvation, slaves, wars, killing, maiming, prisons, locks, keys, swear words, jails, prisons, you name it. Nut houses, crazy people. That's patriarchy. And he's the one that calls himself civilized.
South of Hudson's Bay, James Bay, and at the southern tip of James Bay, the settlement of Moose Factory. News Magazine salutes Education Week with films of an Indian residential school 500 miles north of Toronto. It's one of Canada's 69 Indian residential schools, scattered in key locations as far north as the Arctic Circle. They've a total of 11,000 pupils, orphans, convalescents, those who live too far in the wilderness to get to a daily school. They learn not only games and traditions, such as the celebration of St. Valentine's Day, but the mastery of words, which will open to them the whole range of the ordinary Canadian curriculum. They come to school in September, go home for holidays in June. Instead of the isolation and neglect of the past, a free and equal chance with children in urban centers. A service begins each day. The school is conducted by the Church of England, though it's maintained, like other Indian schools, by the Federal Department of Indian Affairs. For the oldest Canadians, a new future.
We were not forced. They came in with the military and stole our children way back in the 1800s, and for almost 80 years in the last century, the 1900s. They stole our children daily and forced them into government boarding school and religious boarding schools. The Catholics and the Episcopalians, Church of England, and the other churches, they lobbied Washington, D.C., and they divided up the Indians among the Christians. Divided up our children. Here, you Baptists get this. You Lutherans get this. You Episcopalians get this one. You Catholics get this. And it was the Jesuits. I call them the Marine Corps of the Catholic Church. And you know what happened to our young boys and our young women, our young girls, the Catholics and all the other pedophiles, the Christians.
When I was a younger student, the priest would have like movie night in his room in his quarters, and would bring out, goodies, cookies, popcorn, pop, and we'd watch movies. And some of us he would have sit on his lap, and he would stroke his hair, hold us there. He would eventually move you on his lap to a certain position. There would be a bulge in his pants. He would try to hold you on that bulge, and if you tried to remove yourself or get off his lap, he would hold you down. And sometimes it would hurt you to hold you down, or he'd grab your hair. That was movie night. Behind his living quarters, there was, of course, a bathroom and a bedroom. I was hidden there many times by the priest. I can only tell you that in his bedroom, I know there was drapes and a bed. I was hidden under the bed if somebody knocked on the door, or hidden in the drapes. I can tell you I was hidden in the bathroom. I was allowed to help this priest shave. I could put whipped creamy stuff on his face. And one time a nun came in and asked me why I was there, and to this day I don't know why I was there. I mean, all I can tell you is I have a cloud of black. It's dark, and I don't know why I was there. I can imagine as an adult why I would think a child would be in a man's room, but I can't tell you why I was there.
They whipped us, hung us over pipes, handcuffs. Little kids. Maine, I know, I saw it at Chalaco Indian School back in the 1970s, and the American Indian Movement, when we helped those students take over the school. They were being tortured. Torture's nothing new in this country. It didn't happen at Abu Ghraib. It happened for almost a century in the American Indian boarding schools of the United States government. Torture of little children, where they made the older children beat the younger children, so that as a little child, like my dad, he grew up in the boarding schools wanting to be older so that he could abuse the little kids. That's America. That's the United States of America. Torture isn't new for them. They're the most vile country in the history of the human race.
The reason this genocide is unique in the world is for a number of reasons. First of all, it was aimed at children. By aiming specifically at children, it was a kind of genocide that didn't happen really in many other places in the world. Secondly, it was led by the churches, and it had a religious sanction. And also, it happened for a long period of time. Like the Nazi genocide was compressed into about 12 years in Europe. This genocide spanned 5 centuries, and it was supported by laws and by a religious ideology that said it was necessary for Christian people to destroy non-Christian people, and that was sanctioned by the Vatican. So because it extended over a very long period of time, it became so much the norm that it's not as visible as something that happened in a very short period of time. And these laws which allowed Indians to be legally killed, they become such a part of society that it's not even called a genocide anymore, even though the number of people that died in North America from the genocide is greater than any that ever occurred in history. At least tens of millions of people. So all of those things make this a very unique genocide in history, and yet there's no action around the world to bring those people responsible to justice.
You know, you'd be outside running around playing, and we heard a child crying. So we went to go see who this baby was, because, you know, we found them interesting, being kids. And we go to the church, and we go through the side entrance. There's 3 altars in the church at St. Mary's. One of them's the altar of St. Joseph. And we come in through that entrance, and there's this lady there. She's wearing like a white night clothes, and there's 3 nuns there. They're saying the rosary, and there's a priest, whatever he's saying, but he has the Bible in his hand. And then there's 3 younger priests, and one is lifting the floor, the other one is getting underneath the floor, and one is taking the child, the baby, from the mother, and the mother wants the child. She's crying, my baby, my baby. And they hand it off to each other, and we're like watching. And I think the mother saw us, and I think it gave her more energy to fight, because she then had somebody that saw. So she started fighting more and screaming, help, help. And that's when the priest noticed us, so we took off running. And I remember the preacher saying, get them. But we kept running, and I don't think they recognized us or knew who we were, because we didn't get in trouble.
The Native American population was isolated from the white majority. That is almost a consequence of the authorities forcibly taking children from their parents and putting them in residential schools. Is that right?
That's right. There was a law in Canada in 1920 that every Indian child had to be in one of these boarding schools or their parents would go to jail. And because of that policy of forced internment or imprisonment in these schools, we estimate that as many as 50,000 children died over a century in these schools because of malnutrition and disease that in many cases was being deliberately introduced among the students. So we believe it was an attempt to actually get rid of many Indians so that the white settlers could come in and get the land. And that is part of the reason of running these schools.
This policy would nowadays more philosophically be regarded as should we call that a joint venture of state and church to eradicate native culture and seize their property? Were there connections between capital and cultural interests?
Very much. There was the church and state cooperated together, but then it was also an attempt to get the resources and the land of the native people. So, for example, these schools were often built where there were valuable fishing or timber, minerals. It was a way to access those resources. So there's always been an economic incentive as well in getting native people off their land, and that still carries on today.
You were also mentioning there were the experiments with eugenics, that they were sterilizing people that were deemed as, not worthy of having further generations.
Yeah, the eugenics laws started in America. Hitler adopted them later, but they were in fact started in America and Canada in the late 19th century. And there were laws brought in Canada during the 1920s and 30s which made it legal to sterilize any native person. So we know that there were probably thousands of native women sterilized in Western Canada if they didn't go to church, if they were traditional and they held onto their land or their language, they would be forced to be sterilized. And as a matter of fact, I've spoken to number of men who said that if their marks were too high in school, if they were particularly smart, then they would also be sterilized. So under international conventions, those are crimes against humanity. It means you're trying to wipe out a group of people from breeding. And the thing to remember is that this was churches and government and local doctors and that working together to do those kinds of crimes. So that's why we say there should be a war crimes trial in Canada and the United States to look at these crimes, you know.
Allora mando niente di che. Stai aspettando un attimo. Adesso c'è il funzionario, vado del funzionario. Posso parlare con lei?
We call upon the angel of the Empire of Christendom and of the Spirit of the Roman Catholic Church and of the City of Rome to listen and respond to these commands which come from the heart of God. We see you and we name you for what you are, a false and murderous church. Angel of the Roman Catholic Church, your crimes and your lies have reached the heavens. For the blood of the innocent you have murdered have affronted the heart of God. The children you rape and kill witness against you. You can no longer escape justice. For whatever you do to the least of God's children, you do to God himself and herself. For all your unspeakable crimes, for the lands you have stolen and the souls you have corrupted and the children you have murdered, there can be no cure. For you are a murderous body, born of the evil one and pledged to his purpose of conquest and death, of lies and corruption. Know this truth and accept your death as we shun and turn away from you. For God has brought down the mighty from their thrones and lifted up the poor. God has confounded the rich and the powerful and brought justice to the oppressed, so that all mankind may see God as one. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. It is accomplished. Amen. And so with the remains of these ones you have murdered, we commend the false church of Christendom to God's keeping, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust. The false church is gone, never to rise again. Amen. We proclaim this in the name of the true Christ, God, our Mother and Father, and of all humanity, who rules now and forevermore. Amen. May all people hear and accept this truth and live in its light forever, as free and sovereign souls in a world cleansed of war, of violence, lies, murder, and corruption. In God's name, make it so. Amen.
I guess when I think about the transformation or the acknowledgement of people coming forward, I guess throughout all of it, there's laws that protect people. People of the community, people that are victims, society. Then there's the laws that if a person oversteps their position, abuses their authority, there's laws. Laws that bring these people to court, whether they're in charge of banks, corporations, police. If they overstep the boundaries, they're charged criminally and eventually civilly. When I reported my church incident to the detective that was assigned to investigate, he said he had to ask permission from the priest. And I said, you wouldn't ask mine if I was the violator. And I said, he said, like you said, it's sensitive. And my heart it gets really knotted up because when I think about being sensitive, I can actually see a child being placed in the dirt. I can actually see a child losing breath. Those are the night terrors that wake me up. And how sensitive is the law to that child's needs? And when we provide them that knowledge that they're safe and in their own boundaries, we're not protecting the citizens, the sacred citizens, the innocents, and definitely they abuse their power.
So Christianity is not good for Lakota people. The original Christians in Europe, I respect them, but the Christians here in America, they're complacent about the situation with us in this country, and they're silent on the genocide. And I think that's criminal. And we want to bring that to light someday. But this Christianity doesn't do us no good. If the church would own up to some of their misdeeds, the genocide, the ethnocide that they committed, then I think we can have more respect for them. But they're keeping quiet about it, and this is really sad. And we want the country to realize this, and we want the country to talk about this. The Germans, they owned up to what they did to the Jewish people. They built them the biggest museum and they gave them money. But America, they just keep on being capitalist, and they're still killing us. They're still racist towards us. And this is not a good way to live. As Lakota people, we want to live in peace and harmony. When you interpret our words, just the word Lakota, I'm a Lakota, I'm not a Sioux. The Lakota means love, means La means love, La. And Kho means to include. Da means ancient. How can a tribe that's gentle-natured be mistreated as much as we were? Because we live in a kinship system. And the word for father, ate, means you shoulder the burdens of your whole family. That's the word for father. When you hold a child and that child puts his head on your shoulder, that's the description of father. And so we love and have compassion and live together, the kinship system. And this was the best way to live on this world. And so we want to live that way. We want to keep living that way.
So I ask you, what I'm asking you is to look to the indigenous people. They're the ones under attack around the world. And why? Why? It's not because we're stupid or unclean. It is because we're matriarchal. We are a threat to the patriarch. And every country on earth is patriarchal. Every religion, every major religion, including the Buddhists, are patriarchal. They all sanction imperialism. And they all have excuses. every structure of patriarchy is the same. All their religions are structured the same. All their governments are structured the same. Like this, a pyramid with the male on top. Think about it. Rather than in a circle. A never-ending circle, infinity, which is matriarchy.
So even though we have the historical trauma, we can still survive and we can still move forward as far as, how we take care of our children and how we build up our culture. The United States government wanted to kill the Indian and save the man, but they didn't succeed, and that's one of the best things. I see people from all over the world come to Pine Ridge, seeking to understand what happened here. And the Pine Ridge Reservation and the 9 others in South Dakota and throughout Native America, those reservations are just concentration camps. And they were made to imprison us. And it's no longer like that. We can travel freely, but it's like nobody really understands the true history of what America did to the Indians, or to the Red Indians, our Lakota people.
All these Sundances that are being held every summer, I hope that they pray for unity, that we can all think as one and become one and be strong. And like Crazy Horse promised his people that he shall return in the last day. And also the white buffalo cap woman that brought the sacred Chanumpa to the people promised that she will return in the last day, and that there shall be a flood in the last day when there's a buffalo standing in the west holding back the waters, and when the buffalo releases the water, a big flood's gonna come, and those that flee in the mountains shall be saved, she said, and those that don't listen shall perish. So that she also stated that Grandmother Earth, Peachink, that means she's going to renew herself. And afterwards there's going to be a new world. The buffalo shall come back, the wild game and horses. And she also said that means that you shall hear the voice of Grandmother Earth. During that time, the earth shall shake like a rattle. And so we're pretty near that there's a time when the Mother Earth is going to cleanse herself. So every day I look forward to any signs of this happening. We still have the sacred Chanumpa that was brought to us by the Buffalo Cap White woman. And so I hope in the future that our Lakota will be safe and go into the new world.